Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Rate Review Committee meeting. This is Tuesday, February 6, 2024 at 4 p.m. This meeting of the Ayer Rate Review Committee will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation via Zoom is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in a specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. This meeting will be live on Zoom. Did we lose Zoom?
Nope.
Okay.
Oh, she did it in her office.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Sorry about that. The public may access the proceedings by joining Zoom, meeting ID number 828-8571-8742, or by calling 929-205-6099. For additional information about remote participation, please contact Carly Antonellis, Assistant Town Manager at atm@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8220, extension 100 prior to the meeting. And with that, I will call this meeting to order. Quick question, Carly. I'm looking at us on that screen.
Yeah, there's no participants other than this feed.
Okay, but if participants appear, will you?
Yep.
So that I can see them? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. All right, first up on the agenda is to review and approve, there it is. An approval of the previous meeting minutes from January 23rd, 2024. Does anybody have any issues? I didn't see anything, so. Everybody good?
Good.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
All right.
There you go.
Okay, was there a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. The meeting minutes from January 23rd are approved. All right. Next up, review, discussion, and a potential vote on recommendations of the proposed FY 2025 water and sewer rates.
Madam Chair, just before we kick off, I just wanted to introduce and welcome Mr. Bob France from the FinCom, who will be the rep moving forward. I know that Kurt is here, which we appreciate as well. And Bob, I don't know if you know everybody, you probably know.
Well, I was introduced.
Oh, you were introduced.
Earlier,
all right.
Yeah. So.
All right.
I'm
Yep.
good.
It is good. Well, welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
And just real quick, Bob and I met the other night and I sort of gave him a quick summary of where what rate review has been doing and
Good.
going forward.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Sort of a handoff here.
Okay.
All
A little
right.
bit of tutelage, so.
All right.
All right.
Great.
I'm a little slow on the learning side, but I'll catch up. So bear with me.
That's okay.
So,
Okay.
Sue, Madam Chair, so what we have, and I have on the for the shared screen, I sent a memo to the committee. When we met at the last meeting, we were talking about potential water and sewer rates for FY25 based on the model. And the committee asked for 3 scenarios to be run. There seemed to be general consensus of the committee that keeping the sewer at 5% was consistent with the model recommendation as we move forward, but that there was some opportunity potentially for some different scenarios on the water side, largely driven by the retained earnings balance in that enterprise. So we have run per the committee scenario 1, which is no increase to water for FY25 with the 5% sewer. A scenario 2 looks at increasing the water rate by 1%, sewer at 5%. And scenario 3 is a 2% increase on the water and a 5% on the sewer. And so Barbara provided, and we have them on the screen and were attached to the memo, the dashboard screens from the model for each of these scenarios. So that's sort of just to frame sort of where we had left off last time. And on the the recommendation. And to give it just a tad of context, I know that the DPW director mentioned at the last meeting, as have the consultants, that the national trend, the national average on increase on water is 5%. And if memory serves, I think on the sewer front, it was around 8% was the national average. And as we all know, with just framing the issue, the sewer side of things is more expensive than the water side, largely based on the cost of the treatment process and so forth, which I would defer to Dan and Kimberly on the specifics. So those were sort of just to frame the three scenarios were run.
So based on just the memo, even by increasing water 2%, it's basically raising the bill $2.
It's not very much.
It's not.
Yeah.
And where the sewer is consistent in all three models, the difference is just strictly that water portion between the three scenarios.
Yes. And what's our balance in water right now?
For retained earnings, we're just over 4.69 million at the moment in water, and over 2.5 million for sewer. So we are in good shape for retained earnings. I think we were looking at maybe changing some of the recommendations based on some new numbers coming forth. For historically, what you want to maintain in your retained earnings. So still in the process of getting them from last meeting.
So yeah, we're talking really about that red dashed line. So that line is kind of the goal line, the target. 365 days worth of revenue in the retained earnings. There was a note that Rep Tellis mentioned last time that the new Northeast region has a median of 464 days of O&M. So that's a little more conservative of retained earnings in your count. So I reached out to Rep Tellis, I didn't hear back
I haven't
today.
seen them come back to us yet, yeah.
But this is what we used last year, the 365, and it's kind of more of a policy, a comfort decision of the town, the way I understand it. 365 days, 464, obviously more conservative, but I imagine that's how he would respond. It's typically 365, but if you want to be more conservative, less risky, could go a little higher.
Yes.
So if we were to do scenario 3, what would be the projections for the retained earnings?
So 2%?
Yeah.
So according to this document, if we were to do the 2% increase, it looks like it would be in between $5 and $6 million, 5.5.
So it would get us up to about 5.5 million in retained earnings
For next year.
Okay. And what's our projection for sewer with the 5%?
So the 5% increase for fiscal 25, it's looking at just over 3.5 million for the end of fiscal 25, and the retained earnings I gave you were for fiscal year end 23, because we don't have 24 numbers yet. So there'll be a bit of a kind of that year in between difference too.
All right, and the retained earnings are in a fiscal.
They are.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so they're effective. The numbers. Yeah, so the numbers I have are for 6/30/23.
All right. Okay. Well, yeah, I definitely think that the sewer we should stay with the 5.
Okay.
Now, granted, doing the scenario 3, the 2%, it doesn't seem like it would affect the bill when there is a benefit to us to increasing the retained earnings in case of an emergency.
Yeah, there was a bit of a hike in fiscal year 26, like Dan had said, because of the new well source. And it doesn't really go down from there. It would set us up for a gradual increase, as opposed to if we did a 0 or 1%, we might have to do a 3 or 4% down the road. Not knowing
On water?
I'm just saying that if we keep it level, it looks like we'd be comfortable based on our debt service and what we owe. We'd be comfortable for 25, fiscal year 25, with a 0 or 1%. but
If
it
we do the
doesn't.
2%, we're getting a little bit ahead of the game.
Exactly,
Okay,
exactly.
all right.
Oh, and I, through the chair, and I see what you're saying, the concern is the 0% increase of FY 25 with the new well source hitting in that year. There's a chance if we kept it at 0, there could be
Have to be
a 3 or 4%.
I don't know
spike.
what that number
I know you don't
is.
have a crystal ball, but
Right.
I follow what you're saying.
Okay.
Keeping it gradual, I think, is more.
So this would just be
palatable.
kind of like getting ahead, trying to get ahead of the game.
Exactly.
And looking at the 2% from the fiscal 24 annual average residential water bill was 123, would increase it to 125. It's $2, like you mentioned.
Right.
Yeah.
The wellhead project is incorporated in where, Dan?
Yeah, so that's in here.
Okay.
It's in the calculation of the other portions of the model. So we put in there our 5-year capital,
Okay.
which includes the wellhead. And then we also kind of project out the remaining 5 years, the 6 years, 6 to 10 of kind of our average capital per year.
Okay.
So really the first 5 years on here, they're much clearer picture, but years 6 through 10, it gets a little grayer because we can't see that far out exactly where we'll be, what we'll be doing. But,
right.
But this gives you a good idea of sort of where we're headed. That's where we use them. We projected 10 years just to show.
Yep. Okay.
One other thought I had, a way to think about it too, is you know, if we did a 0 or 1% this year, and then, you know, a year or two from now, there's a recession, and then we're asking for, you know, 2, maybe 3%. It's not as palatable or nice for the users and the customers. So, you know,
But if we did a
do it.
2% today, we might only have to do like a 1% in the future because we've already thought ahead today, right?
Potentially, yeah. Based on our retained earnings, like Robert said, the whole reason we're looking at this are pretty high. So
yeah.
So you know, give us that flexibility if there is say a recession a few years from now, we don't have to be really hitting ratepayers in that wallet and you know, do it now. Well, just keep it even keel, not like the 2% now while the economy's still doing okay.
What did we do with water last year? Did we do an increase? 2%. We did 2% last year? Okay.
I believe we've done 2% every year since, was it 2017 or 2018 where we didn't do any increase. And then by sheer coincidence, all the PFAS stuff started. I think so.
Yeah.
We've been consistently at 2% since either 17 or 18.
Quick little segue, because you mentioned the PFAS. So it was also in the news that I guess the EPA has finally decided to say that PFAS is bad. So shocker, I know. But and they're going to start clamping down. So my question is, has new rules on top of the previous new rules been brought forward by the state? I'm talking nationally. PFAS is
Right.
now been decided it's bad.
That's the
Yeah.
EPA. And then, so they're the federal regulators, which we are regulated by the EPA, the federal regulators.
Correct.
But then it takes some time for the state to adopt those
So if we heard any-
regulations. So we have a couple of years.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're going to have a federal drinking water standard. It's very low, but our current treatment is non-detect, so it meets it for the constituents there.
Okay, so we're already like ahead of the game.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we'll already meet those requirements.
Okay, good, because that's really what I wanted to know is where we stand as far as, you know, anything new coming down.
Yeah, so this time,
okay.
unless something else
Okay.
unknown comes up.
Yeah, but if we did the 2% again, we're getting ahead of the game. So if something new changes, we're also ready. We're better prepared for it than we were the first time it came up.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Just last comment, sort of following on your train of thought, Janice, is that I mentioned this last time, is that we've done we're up to speed on the PFAS And we're keeping up with repairs, the new well source. And the way I looked at it was in the last few years, we've had water restrictions because we didn't have the new well source.
It's the Grove Pond water treatment plant. The new PFAS treatment there is causing a restriction. We can't pump as much through that treatment into the system.
Right.
So there's a solution, a clear well storage tank. It's basically a storage tank just downstream of the treatment plant, and that'll get us back to near.
Have we budgeted for that?
So that's anticipated to be paid by the Army. We already have an agreement for them for the original PFAS treatment. So that's something we're negotiating with them right now.
So I guess my overall good. So my overall takeaway is that we've done a lot of good things. We're good, and we're sort of getting towards the finish line in the next year or two. So we want to keep the funding available so we can get that done, and we've got a good water infrastructure in place. And then in the future, we'll be able to say, hey, we're in good shape, and future rate decreases would be even more justified. But, and again, I don't say justified, but we don't want to cut our nose off, spite our face. In other words, we're going to cut rates this year because we have a little bit more, but no, let's get to the finish line, let's get everything done in good shape.
And I would add one thing too, is that the select board too has authorized a lot of ARPA funds for water and sewer projects in recent years to sort of, make the ratepayers not be impacted as hard. With the Spectacle Pond water treatment plant, the transmission we found out through a water main break was in very poor condition. So we had to replace 600 feet of it, but that was all through ARPA. So, something like that comes up, that's what it's going to get you.
We will no longer have ARPA funds for future.
Yeah, those are
unanticipated.
pretty much.
Yeah, like maybe 400,000 left.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm probably off of it on the number. But
that's the ballpark. Plus they sunset
we have to have it all obligated by December 31st.
So it has to be all obligated and contracted. So not just allocated towards projects, you have to have a spending plan in place by December 31st.
We'll spend it, don't worry.
There you go. And then you have a year after that to actually spend it. Yeah.
So, okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Well, I think I think scenario 3 is a good move, because it's going to keep us ahead, and it's a negligible increase.
I agree.
I agree, buddy.
I think so. Yeah, I concur.
I agree.
Colleen or Sarah, any questions?
Sarah?
Comments? Yep.
Question at the end, but first a comment. While the overall or the annual bill appears to only go up either $1 or $2, it's for total, it's actually an increase over 2024 using scenario 3 of $20. It goes from 492 to 512.
Right.
I'm doing up with very bad glasses, so I'm sorry, but 492 to 512, the difference is $20 a year per resident.
Yep. So that difference includes the sewer and the water.
Right.
So the sewer, you're right, is going up 5%. So the total of both bills are going up more than the $2. It's just the water portion that's going up.
But I want to make it clear, it's not $2 for anybody who might be listening later.
Sure.
It's $20.
Right. It's for the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah.
Water and sewer.
If you go with scenario 3.
Right.
The question has to do with commercial rates. Where are they in? This is all residential. The SIUs and the commercial industrial, so a whole lot more water.
If you look in tier 3.
So we're in the blue box.
In the blue box.
Right.
Tier 3.
For the most part, they would be paying tier 3 prices.
Right. But they're going to be paying the same rate, is what you're suggesting?
They give the same rate based on volume.
So here's the question. I was speaking with a businessman this weekend on a number of topics, and he raised water and sewer rates. He pays a residential rate, and he pays multiple business rates because he has a residence and a couple of businesses. And he asked me a question that I have never thought of asking before, but I think it's a fair question. Why can't the SIUs in particular, who make millions of dollars off of our water, or the commercial industrial, the larger commercial industrial, pay a higher rate to offset the cost of the residential rate? They don't have to be equal. We've always had them equal. There was a time, many of you probably won't remember this, when SIU's meters were turned back every quarter. So they started at 0 every quarter. And we're never paying a lot of the paying for the use of the water. That came to public. I came public shortly after I moved here. So we're going back 30 years. And what a ruckus it caused. So I know that's been corrected. But is there any reason why an SIU in particular, or a large commercial industrial, and that would be based on the usage, as you said, why they can't be charged more per cubic foot? I can never figure that out, but I know that's how it's charged, right? Rather than, and have a split rate for residential as you do predominantly SIUs. They are the larger users. I'd really like y'all to give that some thought before the public hearing.
Interesting question.
Yeah, I think that would require a rate review study. I mean, like a study by a rough tellus to reorganize how we do our rate structure. I don't know that we have that kind of time.
So just for information or for me to understand, so what we're saying is right now it doesn't matter whether you're a business or a commercial, it's just based on having more volume that you get charged a higher rate.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
So
And then we're asking to look at potentially just having a higher rate just because they're commercial. That's the difference. Oh, okay. Just so I understand.
So almost like increasing the ratio between tier 2 and tier 3.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Making it tier 4.
Making it tier 4.
And I, in my humble opinion, I know we have years of data. I understand Kimberly's suggestion we need a rate review study and this and the other study everything. I'm still waiting for some reports on the studies that were commissioned last March. So I'll just leave that there. But we have enough data. Why couldn't somebody with a skill set, not me, just calculate if there would be a difference? We can calculate a 3 scenario rate for the residential. You can calculate based on usage, a scenario for the SIUs in particular, or the CNI, just to see if there would be a benefit to the residents, because they're the ones who carry the lion's share of this, as we all know. Like an in-house study that doesn't cost us.
So, thoughts?
I would think that may be something that we can look at next year. I don't know that we can have the time to look at it for this year.
Can I ask a question regarding these tiers? So if I understand that the tiers are based on the cubic feet per 100
cubic feet.
Okay. So by default, so the rates vary depending on your consumption over a period of time. Is that an annual consumption or a monthly or
quarterly?
Quarterly. Okay. So by default, anybody who's using a lot of water is paying a higher rate. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I just wanted to understand that. So the tier 1 are for folks that are barely using any water. Tier 2 are for folks that are using 300 to 600 cubic feet of water.
Right. And so just to be clear, the first 3,000 cubic feet is at the lower rate. The second
I see. Okay.
3,000 cubic feet is at the tier 2.
Okay.
And everything else is at the tier 3 rate.
Okay. I see. So the more water you use, the higher the rate and cumulatively.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Well, I think it's an interesting thing to look into, and I agree. I think we should try to do it in-house. If possible, if you can have some more info to us at our next meeting, would be great. But I understand that, there's also other things going on, so,
We have the
might
ability,
not be able to.
we have the ability to be discreet about,
I'm sorry, what?
are we able to use discretion about the rates for residential versus industrial? I don't know if there's a,
Well, we have a
Where's
rate
the
model,
description?
so we'd be kind of upending the cart
got it.
in order to do something new. Not that that's a bad thing.
No, I know.
Okay.
Yeah,
So, yeah, currently, so we have the residential rate and the commercial rate, and they are exactly the same. So like you said, anything over 6,000 cubic feet, which say, for example, Epic or CPF, they use 800,000 gallons on their biggest day. So they're using a lot of water, paying a lot of money to the town, so significantly footing the bill for water. So it's been tiered like this for many years, ever since I've been here. So that would be a significant change if we were to make a modification to impact those businesses. So I think we'd want to do some outreach and things like that as well if we went down that road, to let them know, hey, this is what's going to be happening. And before that was done.
so what's tier 3? What is the definition of the tier 3? How many cubic feet?
About 6,000 cubic feet.
6,000 cubic feet. What did you say that they're using?
800,000 gallons per day on their biggest day. So usually it's probably, I don't know, half a million. Yeah, you have to do some calcs here.
Then,
But
yeah, I think we should probably at least create a tier 4.
But your typical household, I think, uses somewhere between 1,000 and 1,500. Is that right, Kimberly? Yeah, quarter. It's definitely less than 3,000.
Yeah, then you're gonna have to think if you're gonna do a specific tier for commercial.
It would have to be like if
More
you're
than-
using 100,000 cubic feet or more.
Okay, so you'd still base it on, well, that's where you need to look into it a little more, is because if you're still basing it on volume and just doing another tier, that's one thing, but if we're looking at it to offset residential rates, that's a whole other
Right, so like,
scenario.
it's like decreasing the residential rate and increasing the,
Yeah, like sort of like we do for split tax rate.
Mhm.
Right? You think of it that way, we're putting more of the burden on the commercial users for taxes. So what I'm getting from this, and correct me if I'm misunderstanding, is that we're just kind of looking for that same sort of shift, but with the rates.
Well, that's one
To
idea.
be honest, that didn't come up in the conversation. This is not my.
Oh,
idea.
okay.
But as I thought it through over the weekend, that's exactly.
That type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even if you created such as, for example, a tier 4, okay, yes, the residents are still, it's still maybe get an increase based on the way it is right now. We've created a tier 4 today, okay? But the big commercials like that one are still getting more of the burden, so they're putting in more.
their bills.
So
are
it still
high.
ends up benefiting the residents
Right.
when it comes to the big priced items,
Right,
okay?
Yeah,
So,
I mean.
but I do think that, yeah, we should look into this.
So, I mean, what I would propose, I think it's a very interesting, it's an interesting idea.
Mhm.
I think being realistic, with the time frame to do this
It wouldn't
correctly.
be ready, it wouldn't be
Right.
ready for this time.
But what I'm thinking is when we do the presentation to the select board on the rate recommendations, how you incorporate into the presentation, things we've been looking at or future things, we should, I'm gonna suggest that we make this one of our
This is what we're looking into.
right, for the,
Future changes.
for the year ahead for a couple reasons, so that we do our due diligence on it and that we bring the idea to fruition, meaning whether it's ultimately viable or adopted by the select board remains to be seen. But I do think we should, we did the model last year, which was good, can update the model, is that we do the due diligence, and it's definitely start internally. Do the due diligence on the rate structure, the tiers, the idea of the concept of a residential versus SIU or commercial industrial rate. And we look at that. I mean, I think that and get that information.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
and
Summary.
just, And just to be clear, is it just for the SIUs or is it for all commercial?
Well, I would think we'd need to, that's a fair question and distinction. I think we'd need to look at that.
Because there are
Right,
commercial that don't use a lot of water.
right,
Right, and they would be, but they would come in under a different tier too, so,
yeah. I think there's
yeah.
a lot of options,
Sure.
yeah.
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 Yes, Colleen?
When these three rate structures were created, forget how many years ago it was, Robert, I don't even know if it was before your time, but
Yeah,
it was.
Mhm.
The idea at the time, and so we're going back at least 12, 15 years,
Mhm.
was the 6,000 cubic feet would catch the SIUs. And while that is an accurate statement, the thought process was it would reduce the cost to the residents, which is an inaccurate statement. And it has never trended down. But this, in at least this businessman's mind, and as we talk through it, mine as well, this is a way that maybe that can happen.
Yeah,
And if not, track down, stay stable.
right.
Right. Yeah.
So all rates, all tiers should be reviewed probably every couple of years anyway, based on that period. I wish it was my idea. Give them credit.
Well, you brought it, so you can get partial credit.
Yes.
Yeah, so through the chair, I think for the purposes of today, there's good discussion in this sense that this is one of the committee's projects for this upcoming year. We did the model. And the tiers, these tiers were in place before me. So we're talking at least, 15 to 20 years. We look at the tiers, we look at the idea of a different rate, as I said before, and we do our due diligence and see what that information, tells us as far as future recommendation.
So although I also like the idea, I agree that we should just status quo for this year and we can look into it.
Yeah, we're gonna have to,
And-
because we've got only a couple of weeks.
Yes.
Yeah, we
for the
wouldn't do
public hearing.
anybody, yeah.
And it would upend things in a bad way. But it's definitely going to be something that's going to be, I think, getting fixed for the future. Which is a good thing. So thank you for bringing it to us, I mean, heck, it took us a long time before we got the rate model updated. That was like, that was big when we got that done last year. So, but as far as discussion, as far as what we want to do for present. Well, let me move ahead slightly. So the public hearing, so the March 5th meeting is being rescheduled due to the primary. Okay, so the board's not meeting on March 5th due to the primary. Okay. The board has not decided what new meeting it's meeting at. I will not be able to attend any board meeting until March 19th. So the public hearing is scheduled for March 19th. Okay. So that part we know. We should probably meet one more time as far as, looking at the presentation. So that should be probably towards the end of this month. To start looking at like a draft, because I will be totally out of pocket. All right. So do we want to think over more for these three scenarios and decide at our next meeting, or are we comfortable now so that we can do a draft presentation at our next meeting so that all it will need to be is tweaked before the public hearing on the 19th?
I'm comfortable. Even though I haven't been here that much, I walk through with.
Okay,
Yeah,
so what
I
does
think-
everybody want to do? Everybody's comfortable, but nobody said what they're comfortable
Comfortable
with.
with the 2%.
2%.
The 2%?
1.5.
Yes.
Okay, so the scenario 3.
Is there a motion to that effect? Sure.
I motion that we accept the increase water at 2% and sewer rate at 5%.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the chair says aye. Okay. And also we will be doing a review as far as creating a new tier. So that will be in the draft presentation as to what we're planning on doing for the future.
Yeah, coming attraction. Yeah.
Coming attractions, right?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
could we also, would the committee consider a motion to call the public hearing for Tuesday, March 19th at 6 as part of the select board meeting? That's one.
Oh, you want it right now? Okay.
Yeah.
Somehow the way you worded it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do it now. I'll make a motion that the public hearing should be on March 19th at the select board meeting. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Chair says aye. Okay, so that part's been scheduled. All right, now, when are we going to schedule our next meeting?
Dan, through the chair, how long do you need to, you and Barbara generally, and Kimberly put together the presentation?
Couple of weeks. It could either be, we're typically meeting on Tuesdays, the 20th or the 27th, either one.
You want to do it on the 27th?
Yeah, I won't be here.
Oh, yeah.
You won't be here?
Yeah.
Is you going to be just not here that day or all that week?
I'm out for almost 2 weeks.
You're out for almost 2 weeks. When do you leave? Are you out, what, the last week or the 19th?
Yeah, so yes, she's out those 2 weeks.
Okay.
19th's a holiday. Yeah.
All right. I mean, well, like I said, I'm going to be out of pocket. So I wouldn't even be able to meet until like the 18th, unless somebody wanted to meet with me on a Saturday, the 16th of March. I don't think anybody wants to meet on a Saturday.
March 16th.
Yeah. Well, can you start working on the draft and then we can still have the meeting on like the 27th?
Yeah, I
Okay.
can just do that.
All right.
Yeah.
So February
27th at 4 o'clock?
at 4.
Okay. And that will be to look over the draft presentation and discuss anything else that comes up. Okay. All right. So now, are we all good on that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And now update on the transfer station operational and financial study.
Okay. For you, Madam Chair. So the police, thank you to them for the traffic counts they completed up at the station. I got those from them and submitted them to Ty and Bond to factor into their evaluation. I spoke with Mike Schrader from Ty and Bond. He was the gentleman who was present a few meetings ago. Spoke to him earlier this week. So they're scheduling the visits to 3 different communities to check their stations. I also talked to him about potentially meeting with Irene Ogden, who's at MRPC, and she's Central Mass Regional, I forget her title, but she's in the recycling realm and she knows all the various stations in our area. So she's probably a good resource to talk to. So we'll be touching base with her and potentially getting some input from her as we go forward. Mike also did talk to Casella. That's our current waste and recycling hauler. So he's working with them and looking at their agreement we have as well to factor into the evaluation, and the rate model, the finance rate model is under development. So they're still working. And as we kind of talked about, it'd be towards the end of March would be when we expect another meeting with recommendations.
Okay. Remind me, did we or did we not put into like for them to study, like even like opening up permits to other members of the towns? I know we discussed it, but I don't remember what we decided.
I think the scope was very open-ended. It was kind of, pretty much everything was on the table. We had that list that the committee brought up.
Yeah.
Right, and that was on it.
In the proposal.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, you have some like, that are, close enough to the transfer station. They might be in Groton, but they're close enough, and they could get a different rate and a different color sticker or something like that. These are just ideas that were discussed and I just couldn't remember where we left off. So, okay. All right. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, you look like you were about to have one, that's why I asked.
So really expressive, sorry.
So, okay, well, that sounds good. All right, and we've scheduled our next meeting, so anybody have anything else?
Nope.
No? Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
And the chair says aye, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.